One of my favorite miniseries is called Band of Brothers. Maybe you've seen it. I'll just confess to you that I've seen it several times. Maybe it's because of my interest in American history, or maybe it's because of my reverence, my respect for our military and the unspeakable sacrifice that they make for us. My grandparents, my granddads both served. My dad and Susan's dad served. My son serves today. And I grew up near the largest naval base in the world, and I saw many of my friends miss a mom or a dad for 6 months or more at a time while they were out on a deployment. This was before FaceTime and worldwide cell coverage and email. So the level of sacrifice that our military makes is mind-blowing and deserves our highest respect. Anyway, Band of Brothers, episode 8 is called The Last Patrol. And the war, World War II, is winding down. And Easy Company's soldiers are still very brave, but are now keenly aware that they might actually make it home alive. Something most of them thought was impossible when the war began just a couple of years earlier for them. The brutality of their journey, especially in places like Bastogne, the Battle of the Bulge, scarred them for the rest of their lives. But now they're in the French town of Haguenau, which would be the last real combat experience that Easy Company would have. General Eisenhower and his military command, they want to know what Hitler is thinking. So they order Easy Company to cross the river into this German-occupied town just on the other side and capture German soldiers alive and bring them back across the river for an interrogation. It's not like they were going to politely knock on the doors and invite enemy soldiers to join them for coffee and conversation. This operation would require 15 men to silently travel in rafts across the river without being detected by German snipers who were watching the river, by the way, and then grab these soldiers and move swiftly and silently through the village. After making the captures, they plant some bombs, haul these guys who were unwilling German soldiers and they'd be resisting arrest, bring them back into the boats, then cross back over the river. It's crazy. So they make a plan and then they choose the men and they suit up and then they wait until the middle of the night. Because when you want to do something that requires stealth, when you want movement that needs to go unnoticed, action that needs to be hidden, you do it under the cover of darkness. When I was a teenager, I snuck out of my house once or twice, through a bedroom window, blatantly broke the rules, disobeyed my parents. I'm not recommending it, I'm just confessing it. And you know when I did that? At night. Because nobody sneaks out at noon when everybody can see you. You sneak out at night. You put on a ball cap or a dark hoodie. Darkness gives you cover if you don't want to be seen. And that's how we meet the guy in today's Easter narrative, under the cover of darkness. This year we decided we'd look at some lesser known players in the Easter story, people who make the cut of getting named in the Bible, but they're not usually talked about in church. In fact, a couple of these people that we're looking at in this series are folks we've never taught about at PCC. Not out of bad intent, just because they're easy to overlook. But I felt the voice of God saying to me this year, look again. And what we learned shaped us as teaching pastors, and I think it'll affect you too. So today we're looking at someone who we first meet in the darkness because he wants to be anonymous. And we'll get to his nighttime encounter, but a little background is in order first. Now there was a Pharisee, a man named Nicodemus, who was a member of the Jewish ruling council. A Pharisee was someone who is committed to absolute perfection in every aspect of the law. See, when God gave the basic rules that we have in the Bible, there were very few details about how we were supposed to apply them. And so over the years, the religious leaders felt like they needed to help us understand these ambiguous orders from God. Let me give you just one example, and there are many examples. In the Bible, we're told to simply remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. And we're told that on the Sabbath day, no work can be done. That's one of the 10 commandments, by the way, so it's really important. But here's the problem. God clearly commanded people not to work on the Sabbath, but he never defined exactly what work was. So the Jewish commentary, the one called the Mishnah, dedicates 24 chapters to the Sabbath subject alone. So they decided to tie a knot on the Sabbath was to work, but then what's a knot? So they decided that the knot of a camel driver and a sailor, that would be work, but a woman could tie up a slit in her dress and the strings of her cap and those strings on her girdle and the straps of her shoes or her sandals. That wouldn't be work. And this is where it gets funny. So suppose a man wanted to let down a bucket into a well and get some water on the Sabbath. He couldn't do it because tying a knot in a rope was work, but he could tie the bucket to a woman's girdle, and that would be perfectly legal. What about carrying something? If I carry a book to read, is that work? Was it work to wear your false teeth? Was that a burden? How about an artificial leg? Could a chair be lifted? How about a baby or a child? All those were questions they felt like they had to answer. See, the word Pharisee means separated one. So when John tells us that Nicodemus is a Pharisee, he's saying here's a guy who had separated himself from ordinary life in order to keep every detail of the law. And some of us can relate to this. We went to church from our earliest memory, got the high attendance Sunday school pin. We knew not only the basic overview of the stories, but had actually memorized large sections of the Bible. The dream of every Jewish parent was for their kid to grow up and become a Pharisee, and Nicodemus had made his parents very proud. And yet, he wanted to talk to Jesus, which was scandalous. He came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you're doing if God were not with him." Well, there it is. He came to Jesus at night. Wasn't Jesus around during the day? Was Jesus like the cool, creative, artsy types who sleep for half the day, get up at 3 in the afternoon, stay out until 3 in the morning? Maybe. But John's not talking about Jesus, who is around during the day, by the way. He's telling us something about Nicodemus. He went at night, where he could slither through the shadows and not be seen by his fellow Pharisees, where it's harder for the reporters to catch a glimpse of the politician talking to the scandal maker. In other words, Nicodemus' fascination for Jesus and his seeking out of Jesus was something he wanted to hide. He didn't want anybody to know about it. So he used the oldest ally of secret making, darkness. Come on now. Haven't you ever done something that you didn't want anybody else to know? We know what this is like, don't we? I mean, all of us do. Most of us have once or more than once come home after curfew and parked the car down the street and slowly opened the front door, just a crack, so we could slither through it, tiptoed our way through the foyer, up the staircase, around the creak in the floor, down the hallway, past our parents' room. We skip brushing our teeth, too much noise for that. We get into bed with our clothes on so we don't have to open a drawer and get our pajamas. And all of this only to grow up and find out that mom and dad knew all along. They were awake the whole time. They heard every motion from the footsteps in the yard to the doorknob to the fluffing of your pillow. It makes me think about years ago when all of our kids were still at home. Susan got tired. She went through this thing where she got tired of us eating all the goodies she had wanted to put in our kids' lunch boxes every day. And she came up with this simple solution. Every week, she would go to the store and she would buy all of the snacks she needed for that week's school lunches. And then she bought 5 permanent bags and she labeled every one of them for a different day of the week. All the individually packaged snacks for that week would be prearranged and she had it all organized and we were all given regular, clear, strict reminders from her that these school snacks were completely off limits to regular cravings. But one day, I just found the temptation overwhelming. I'd eaten some kind of healthy and completely unsatisfying dinner, like like a salad with 2 drops of fat-free dressing, and by 7:30, I was starving to death. Oh, sure, there was still a half a pound of lettuce left over, but I just could not stand the thought of grazing on one more leaf of grass. I needed something manly, something with chocolate chips and corn syrup and confectioner's sugar, something made with lard and animal fat. I'd eaten rabbit food for dinner. I'd been to the gym that morning, and you know what? I deserved a little sugar splurging. But when I opened our pantry, the stuff I was allowed to eat, all that was there was food that would make a squirrel happy, like granola and nuts and sunflower seeds and raisins. And then I thought about those bags, those beautiful school bags hanging up just a few feet away, filled and waiting for me. Susan was upstairs, so I tiptoed toward the bags. I worked around that one floorboard that always creaks, and then in stealth mode, I stood before those bags, and I looked for all the booby traps she might have set. I didn't find any, so I opened the first bag, and I found the jackpot. Something like this, individually wrapped packages of 6 Oreos. This doesn't have 6 Oreos. This is 2. It's just enough to make you mad. But anyway, I slowly removed one of those bags, and I looked around like a guy robbing a jewelry store. I was just about to open the package and indulge when I heard Susan coming down the staircase. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I could not get caught. So I went to put the Oreos in my pocket, and I realized I was wearing a pair of sweatpants. I had no pockets. So I did what any warrior-like man of the house would do. I stuffed the bag of Oreos down my pants. And it was a bag a lot like this, and every time I moved, you could hear the package rattling around. And so I started to walk really slowly, not really moving my hips, trying to act normal. And she looked at me, she's like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Nothing. I pulled a muscle this morning when I was at the gym." My plan then was to shuffle my way to the bathroom where I could turn the fan on and throw all 6 cookies in my mouth, then dispose of the wrapper. But on my way to the bathroom, the bag slid down my leg and fell out onto the floor, right in front of her. I looked up, she's standing there. She was a little bit incredulous at first, and then we both just laughed until we cried. I was busted. There was no denying it. There was no stealth about it. We all try to get away with something from time to time. Some of our secrets are more lighthearted and harmless, like Oreos maybe. Some are highly personal. Nicodemus wanted to check Jesus out, but he wanted to do it without anybody really knowing it. Now, I don't know if he was afraid or embarrassed, but what I do know is that Nicodemus wanted this conversation off the record. And some of us can really connect with this guy right now because you feel the same way. You're here because we provided a way for you to check out the claims of Jesus through your laptop or your phone or the big screen from the anonymity of your own home. Other people physically came to a campus today, but we made a way for you to slip in. We didn't insist that you stand out or you stand up or sign your name or introduce yourself. The lights in that room are dim. There are lots of aisle seats, so you can slip in and slip out as you want to. Moving around in the cover of anonymity was okay for Nicodemus, and we think it's okay for you too. John's account casts no shame on Nicodemus for wanting his investigation to be private. And we don't either. The statement he makes is more of a question. Remember what he says, "Rabbi, we know that you're a teacher who has come from God." What he's saying is, we, the religious leaders and other folk, we are all intrigued by you. I mean, you're the talk of the town, and it's obvious that you're really something special. But hidden in his statement is an implied question. It's almost like he's asking, Jesus, who are you really? Are you a miracle man? Are you a guy with special powers? Are you just a great communicator? Are you a stirring social activist? Or is there something more? I'm convinced that most people know that there's something more to Jesus than just a great guy or a moral man or a martyr, but you're not exactly sure who or what he is. And that's why Nicodemus's question and Jesus' answer is so important to us. Jesus replied this way. He said, "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." "How can someone be born when they're old?" Nicodemus asked. Surely they cannot enter a second time into their mother's womb and be born. As you can imagine, Jesus' declaration is a little confusing. Jesus is essentially saying that his followers will undergo such a radical change that it's like a new birth. It's to be so transformed as to be like having your soul born all over again. And this process is not one of human achievement, but of God's power and his grace. But Nicodemus, ever the rule follower, he takes Jesus' words literally. And he says, in essence, well, I know that a fundamental change is necessary, but in my experience, that kind of transformation is just not possible. There's nothing more that I'd like to do than to change like that, but you might as well tell me to re-enter my mother's womb and be born a second time. As William Barclay, one of my favorite Bible experts, says, Nicodemus is up against the eternal problem, the problem of someone who wants to be changed and who cannot change himself. Don't we hear things like this all the time? Or at least we think them. We know someone and we say, that person will never change. And the longer we know them and the longer we see them do stupid, crazy, destructive things, the more hardened our position becomes. God might be able to change most people, but not that one. Nicodemus actually thinks that about himself. And maybe you think that too. And maybe you've thought of God's role in your life as like a judge, issuing condemnation for the things that you've done. Jesus wants to set that straight, both for who you can become and for the mistakes of your past. So in this under the cover of darkness exchange with Nicodemus, Jesus speaks some of the most famous words to him and to us. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. This is a call to action. Nicodemus was already asking the right questions. He was checking out who Jesus was. He was serious about seeking out truth, like many of you. It's good. You're on the right path. But at some point, your journey can no longer be a secret. At some point, you have to choose, as Jesus said, between light and darkness. Jesus saying to Nicodemus, and through time, he's saying it to you and me, that faith is not a private matter. When you live by the truth, Jesus said, you step out of the shadows of darkness and into the light so that the work that God did in you can be seen plainly. By who? By everyone. So after this encounter, you'd think that Nicodemus would fall immediately on his knees, profess his allegiance to Jesus, and come out to the world about his commitment, but he doesn't. He leaves, still under the cover of darkness, tiptoes back into his old life and tells no one. He even went back to the Jewish ruling council that he was a member of, the same council, in fact, that decided Jesus' ultimate fate. He had a vote, Nicodemus did, and a voice that could have spared Jesus of crucifixion. He could have stood up and said, hey, fellas, I met that guy. He's not evil. He doesn't deserve to die. There's something different, something of God about him. Or he could have objected. He could have been the sole no vote. But in the same way that Nicodemus silently, secretly encountered Jesus, he was silent when they sentenced Jesus. Not a peep, not a word, not an objection of any kind. And I wonder if Jesus' words rang out for Nicodemus during that debate. Whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, Jesus said, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. I don't know what went through Nicodemus's mind during the deliberations that ended Jesus' life, but we do know what happened right after Jesus died. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. Stay with me now. This is important. Jesus died around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The Sabbath, that 24-hour period where no work could be done, it started at 6 p.m. So they had to hurry. The body had to be brought down and wrapped and buried before the Sabbath started. Otherwise, it would have to stay on the cross at the mercy of all the wild animals for an entire night and day. It was light outside. Now there was no more hiding. It was time to decide, time to disclose the secret truth, time to declare to the whole world where Nicodemus' real allegiance was. This would be a no turning back crossing of a line, and Nicodemus was about to step over it. It was the Jewish custom to wrap the bodies of the dead in linen cloths and to put sweet spices between the folds of the linen. So Nicodemus chose. He boldly stood in front of his Jewish brothers and anointed the body of Jesus with the spices that he provided, enough spices for the burial of a king. Touching a dead body would make him ceremonially unclean to Jewish people, but would make him perfectly clean before God. Now Nicodemus would know and understand what it meant to be born of flesh and born of spirit, for a new creation was being formed inside of him, and going public was critically important as a part of his own transformation. We live in a world that tells us that faith is a private matter, an academic exercise, a separate segment of your life that doesn't have to intersect with the rest of your life. And I want you to know, Jesus wants us all to know that nothing could be further from the truth. Nicodemus, after investigating in the darkness, harnessed the power of God and walked into the light. And along the way, he made a decision to put the light and the truth of Jesus first and above everything else, above fear, above his questions, above the pushback that would come from his friends and family. And you can do that too. You can begin that journey right now, because like Nicodemus, at some point, you have to deal with this question, the Jesus question. You can't keep ignoring it and satisfy that longing in your soul at the same time. We want to help you. As always, we're not going to single you out, but in just a minute, we're all going to bow our heads as your campus pastor leads us all in prayer. For some of you, this will be the first time you've actually had a chance to commit your life to Jesus. So everyone, right now, take a deep breath. I want you to empty your mind of all that other stuff, and let's talk to God together. For some of us, this will be the most consequential moment of your whole life. No kidding. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to just bow your head with me. We're not going to do anything strange or weird or anything to try to single you out. I just want you to focus for a minute on who God is. And along the way of this prayer, I'm going to give you a chance to reflect and to speak to God out of your own soul. And I'm just going to guide you along the way. God, first, we just want to thank you. We want to thank you for what Jesus did. We want to thank you for creating us and then for rescuing us. We want to move into the light. And so the first step in doing that, God, is we just want to acknowledge our need for you. We are desperate for you, God, to fill that void that some of us have tried to fill in so many ways. So right now, we just pause to say, we need you, and we thank you. We also have some sin to confess. Today, we recognize that we've not gotten some things right, God. We've done some things we're not proud of. We've done some things that you're not proud of, and we know that you didn't come to condemn us. In fact, we claim the truth that the Bible teaches us, that you're faithful and just, and that if we come to you and we confess our sin to you, you will forgive our sin and cleanse us from everything we've ever done wrong. So right here, right now, God, we've got some things we want to confess to you, and we're going to do that. and we believe. We believe the truth about who Jesus is. We believe that he came in perfection. We believe that he died for our sin. We believe that he paid the price we couldn't pay. We believe that he extends his hand to us right now in redemption. We believe it, God, and we receive that gift. Help us today to fully live into the light. We step out into the light, out of the darkness, because of you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Step into the light. Step into the light. The darkness can't survive the fire in his eyes. So step into the light. Step into the light. You were never meant to hide. You were made to be alive. So step into the light. Yeah. Step into the light. The darkness can't survive the fire in his eyes. So step into the light. Step into the light. You were never meant to hide. You were made to be alive. Come on. Step into the light.
Now stand with arms high and heart abandoned in awe of the one who gave it all. And now stand, my soul, Lord, to you surrendered. All I am is yours.
So step into the light. Step into the light. Step into the light. Step into the light.
If you're ready to step into the light, if you prayed that prayer today, then we're so excited to walk alongside you on this journey. If you decided that you're ready to step out of the darkness, then let me know. You can reach me by emailing me at mark.tapscott@pccwired.net. You can also fill out a Connect card and let me know that way. I'll be in touch with you right away. We'll also be offering a class after Easter that's just for you called Starting Point. You can go to our website for details on that and to get signed up. So thanks for being here today. Come back next week as we continue in our Change series. We'll see you then.